Hey friends, welcome back. In this video, we will discuss negotiation theory and strategy, giving you the tools to successfully negotiate salary increases, promotions, save money in car purchases, and the like. We will be discussing key ideas from the book Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, who spent 20 years with the FBI and was a lead negotiator on several high-profile kidnapping and terrorism cases. His approach is unique because it encourages you to not come to a compromise, which is the approach of many classic texts on negotiation, like getting to yes. When you compromise, let's say if you defer a promotion or pay raise, you are the one losing out on time and money for years. The opportunity cost is really high. These ideas are simple and easily applied to daily life situations. I will also share personal stories of successful negotiations that helped me buy a car from a dealer, which I got at $1,000 below invoice price, got the previous owners of the house we currently live in to pay closing costs in a red-hot Seattle real estate market, and share stories of some of my colleagues across the country who have negotiated perks such as extra vacation time and got their employer to pay for expensive parking when base salaries were non-negotiable. We will end this video with a compelling story of how Chris Voss and the lead negotiators at the FBI saved the life of a CIA hostage when negotiating with the dreaded Filipino rebel leader to consolidate the negotiation principles we will learn in this video. It's a fascinating story, so stick around to the end. Timestamps are in the description below, so feel free to move around to a different section if you'd like. Start with getting over the fear and anxiety that negotiation can trigger. We worry about being taken for a ride and not being skilled enough in the negotiation process. We also think that negotiation is something needed by those in business, in high-powered leadership roles, but the reality is that negotiation is something we do every day. Like me, negotiating with my teen daughter to take out the garbage, and with my wife when deciding where to go for dinner on Friday night. Salary increases and promotion-related negotiations, while important, are not as critical as life and death negotiations done by the FBI to secure hostage releases, which is one of the big reasons why we perform poorly in these situations. Many of us switch employers to get the role and compensation we desire rather than indulge in a serious round of negotiations. What I learned from this book is that we should not end our negotiation at the first instance of hearing a no. Rather, this is an important step in the negotiation process. Good negotiation happens at the emotional level of the brain and is not rational. Your job as a negotiator is to practice and display empathy towards the person you are negotiating with by understanding their emotions and learning to see the situation from their point of view. Ultimately, you need to get them to feel comfortable enough to let their emotional guard down, which is your opening to secure the result you desire. Voss argues in the book that most people have two basic emotional needs: to feel secure and to feel in control. Think about this analogy of the human rider sitting atop an elephant to understand how the human mind works. The rider represents reason and can only do their best to direct the elephant. The elephant represents the emotion and is far more powerful with its own mind and will only comply with the rider's commands if those commands are in alignment with its desires. Thinking in this way helps to understand that emotions overwhelm logic and rational arguments during a high-stakes negotiation. Calculated empathy is the art of understanding someone else's feelings to get what you want from them. For example, if you are pitching an expensive idea to your manager who's on a tight budget and want to be successful, you have to be seen as someone who is enabling the manager to achieve their goals rather than an adversary who is competing for limited funds in their budget. Voss outlines 5 empathy techniques in his book that I thought was brilliant. Active listening. Talking slowly and calmly shows that you are concerned about how the other person is feeling. Even small gestures like nodding your head, smiling, looking into their eyes, and using short phrases like "I hear you," "for sure," will make your counterpart feel as if you are listening to them. This is a hard skill to master. I think of this as being present with the other person in a way such that for the time that you are talking, the universe ceases to exist. Using the right tone. A light and encouraging voice should be your default tone in these negotiations. The wrong tone of your voice can lead to unfortunate consequences. A 2018 New York Times article pointed out that the media, repeatedly referring to Hillary Clinton's voice as shrill, may have played a role in the ultimate failure of her presidential candidacy in 2016. Reflecting back, repeat the last 3 words the person said in your next sentence. By imitating this pattern, you are signaling to the other person that you have clearly understood them and your thought process is similar to theirs. For example, if the person you're negotiating with says, "I don't think that's possible," you should respond by saying, "Are you saying that it's not possible to get this project completed by Friday with the staff that we have available?" Labeling. It helps to identify and vocalize someone else's emotions with phrases like, "It seems like," or "It sounds like," "You are disappointed by what is being offered." This statement is a suggestion and allows wiggle room to diffuse a situation if your assumption is wrong. Accusation audits. List every bad thing your counterpart could say about you at the beginning of the negotiation with phrases like, "You're probably thinking I'm in your office complaining all the time and I'm constantly asking you for resources, even though you have told me multiple times that resources are limited and budgets are tight." This helps to trigger your counterpart's innate empathy and makes them want to reassure you that you're not as bad as you are portraying yourself. You can give your counterpart the feeling of autonomy by asking open-ended questions, starting with how and what. For example, if you are maxed out and your boss gives you a demanding new project, ask, "How do you expect that I will be able to find the time for this project? What are you hoping to accomplish?" Open-ended questions starting with why, on the other hand, are very problematic in negotiation and can be perceived as an accusation or even borderline hostile. Use words like "I see" or "tell me more," which are neutral and can help probe the thought process of your counterpart. The goal is to put your counterpart at ease so that they see you as a helper, not as an adversary. This is a technique that a friend of mine used during a job interview when she found out that the manager could not pay her a higher base salary but had the flexibility to cover her parking expenses and gave her an extra week of conference time. People often say yes to get someone else off their back without disappointing them in a big way. This is not a true commitment and is just a way of ending the conversation. This happens because of the innate human instinct for reciprocity. The most counterintuitive idea that I learned from this book is that often you need to get the other party to say no to something because saying no makes your counterpart feel in control. When we say no to something, it's a way of setting boundaries and demonstrating our independence. To get to know, Voss recommends asking your counterpart questions that are designed to prompt negative answers. For example, you can deliberately mislabel your emotions or desires, forcing them to correct you or ask something what your counterpart doesn't really want. This allows them to draw boundaries and establish their comfort zone. The two golden words in negotiation are, "That's right." If you can get your counterpart to say these words, it means that now both parties are now in alignment. They are crediting you with seeing things their way and now feel that they are dealing with someone who understands and respects their point of view. "That's right" allows you to get a commitment from your counterpart to your preferred course of action. If you can get your counterpart to make even a small commitment, then you can potentially get them to make larger and larger ones later on. In the book Crucial Conversations, the authors describe the AMPP technique: ask, mirror, paraphrase, and prime. You could start by asking simple questions like, "What do you mean?" It's like building a bridge that will help you understand the other person's point of view. Mirror their responses, especially with your tone and nonverbal body language. Paraphrase to make them feel safe and to demonstrate that you're open-minded, listening, and empathetic. And lastly, prime the other person's responses by verbally guessing what their emotional state might be and encouraging them to respond. Voss writes that people are powerfully guided by a desire to be fair and reasonable. You could destabilize the other side by saying, "I just want you to treat me fairly." The goal is to trigger defensiveness and a willingness to concede because no one wants to be perceived as being unfair or unreasonable. Sometimes a lowball offer is pitched and is labeled as a fair offer, such as a very low salary. You could counter by saying, "I see that the offer is fair and it seems like you've got some pretty good evidence to back that up. Are you prepared to show me the salary data?" This will force them to divulge more information to you that will give you deeper insight into their true negotiation position. People respond differently to identical choices based on how they're presented. For example, the framing effect would make health-conscious consumers more likely to purchase milk when it's marketed as 99% fat-free versus with 1% fat. When negotiating, frame your position in a way that it appears attractive to your counterpart. People fear losses much more than they value gain. Knowing this is very valuable as you can frame your preferred solution as something that prevents your counterpart from incurring a loss. In the book Influence, Robert Cialdini argues that loss aversion is closely tied to an idea called the scarcity principle. The scarcity principle makes things with limited availability more appealing, and thus rare goods are expensive and abundant goods are cheap. We are more compelled to buy these goods because we instinctively fear that we will lose the opportunity to own a rare item if we do not act immediately. You could use this principle to your advantage by making your counterpart feel that your offer has an element of scarcity. Even after you've gotten your counterpart to agree to your terms, there is still one problem. How do you get to trust them to follow through? You need to lock in a commitment and an implementation plan. Use open-ended questions to give your counterpart skin in the game. Make it clear that if they don't keep their end of the bargain, when you will fail, they will look really bad and be embarrassed in front of their bosses. When working with someone who is not trustworthy, try to get a written agreement in place. If that is not an option, I suggest emailing them a summary of your discussion and agreements after your meeting. This offers you a better chance of keeping them honest, but do not expect a response to your email in return. Liars tend to be more verbose and use more complicated, rambling sentences, hoping to draw your attention away from the web of dishonesty they're weaving around you. Voss explains that they also use more distant third-party pronouns like they, them, and we rather than I or me. They also tend to avoid eye contact. Voss stresses the importance of doing your homework, of collecting vital information, as all negotiations are exercises in information gathering. There are some hidden pieces of information that, if were known, can completely transform the dynamic of the negotiation and the outcome. He labels these as black swans. Here's a real-life story. My wife and I were struggling to find a home in a good school district in Seattle that had a yard and enough space for our family for about 18 months, and then we found this house that met all of our requirements on our checklist, which is what we were working out of by that point. During our negotiation process, our agent found out that the couple selling us had 2 kids and were moving closer to their family in Arizona as they were in desperate need for childcare help. Only the wife had stayed behind to sell the house, and the rest of the family had moved already. We knew they wanted to finish the transaction fast. We got them to pay closing costs and all of the repairs we requested, even though the market was red hot seller's market at the time, and got our home at an amazing price. High stakes negotiations should ideally be done face to face to pick up on nonverbal and body language cues, as too much information is lost when negotiating on Zoom or on email. Voss advises hitting the pause button if you're getting too emotional. You don't have to have emotional outbursts during a negotiation. This can be a deliberate strategy on the part of your counterpart, trying to rattle you to force you into counterproductive moves. Do not make this mistake of playing into their hands. Okay, as promised, here's another real-life negotiation story. When I was looking to buy a car 5 years ago, I went in for a test drive for the car that I liked and decided on the detailed specs that I wanted, but did not negotiate with the car salesman in person, as I did not think I would do well with someone who does this for a living and whose income depends on sales commissions. I came home and found 5 local dealers in our area and sent out a single email to their internet sales divisions telling them the specs of the car that I needed. I made sure to carbon copy all dealerships and asked them to send me their final quote and out the door price the same day, and told them that I would buy the car the same evening. I clearly told them that if I came in and had to pay $1 more in unexpected taxes or any hidden charges, I would call off the deal immediately. They all sent me their quotes, and I pitted the 2 most competitive bids directly against each other to get them down to a really low price. They were not happy competing for my business in this way, but that really wasn't my problem. After I signed all the paperwork, the glum sales rep told me that I had bought the car $1,000 below the invoice price. Idea credit, Ramit Sethi. Now the story that brings everything together. In the year 2000, the militant group Abu Sayyaf in Philippines had captured a CIA agent and were demanding a $10 million ransom for his release. And their principal adversary was a rebel leader, Abu Sabaya, who was a sociopath killer and had committed every possible crime you can imagine. He argued that his community had suffered 500 years of oppression and wanted to establish a religious state in the southern Philippines. At first, the FBI negotiators prolonged the conversations, but eventually created a 6-point written operating plan. First, they planned to use effective pauses. Silence is very powerful. They encouraged Sabaya to keep talking incessantly. Eventually, he was emotionally drained after his rambling monologues. They offered minimal encouragement. Simple phrases like yes, okay, I see, to effectively convey way that they were now paying full attention to Sabaya, to all he had to say. Mirroring. Rather than argue, the negotiators would listen and repeat back what Sabaya had said. Labeling. They would label Sabaya's feelings to describe how he felt. For example, they would say, "It all seems like so tragically unfair to you and your community, and we can see why you're so angry." Paraphrase. Negotiators would repeat what Sabaya was saying to them in their own words. This would show him that they really did understand him and were not merely parroting his concerns. Summarize. Once they were able to clearly articulate all of the dubious demands, they heard Sabaya speak the golden words, "That's right." From that point onwards, the talk of 10 million in ransom just disappeared. The FBI agent successfully engineered an escape for the captured CIA agent, and he was rescued. Sabaya was ultimately killed in a shootout 2 years later by the Philippine military units. That's right did two things here. It allowed the negotiators to draw out the talks and divert Sabaya from hurting the CIA agent. It also gave the Philippines military time to mount the rescue operation. I hope this video gave you several ideas to work on improving your negotiation skills. I leave you with this video on design thinking, 9 steps to designing the life you want. Consider liking this video and subscribing to this channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.